Alright, in today's video we're going to be talking about in Godot what delta actually is, because whenever you're asking questions like how do I make this frame dependent or independent, people are always like, oh, just multiply it by delta. But yeah, that fixes your problem, but what does multiplying by delta actually do? That's what we're going to be talking about today. So before we get deep into the topic, I want to show you what the problem is first. So here we're applying gravity every physics frame downwards on the player. So if we were let's go 60. So the physics engine should be running 60 frames per second. So we made our game like this. We wanted our jump to feel like this, and our game feels good. But then you deploy your game, and someone has a really bad computer, or they're like rendering something, or for some reason they're lagging, and they're running the game at 20 frames. Now if we were to run it, all of a sudden we're jumping really high, which is not how we designed our game. And on the other side, say the frames aren't capped, we're running 144 frames. And we go to jump, and we can barely even get off the ground before falling back, and we're just like snapping to the ground. Now this is because, let's reset our gravity, and that is because the value of gravity, which is 100, is being applied downwards on the player on velocity.y. It's being applied downwards every single frame. Now let's just open paint. Now say this 20 frames, 60 frames. So in 20 frames per second versus 60 frames per second, the value of 100, which is our gravity, this is being applied 20 times per second, and 100 is being applied 60 times per second. What that means is the lower your frame rate, the less gravity is going to be applied downwards on you. So what that means is more frames means more gravity, which is not what we want at all, because we want the game's gravity to be consistent with frame rate. So this is when people are like, oh, just multiply by delta. Multiply by delta. Now this does work, of course, but what is delta? Well, delta is the amount in seconds between each frame. So if this is running 20 frames, delta would be 1 divided by 20, because 1 divided by 20 would be the time between each frame for 20 frames per second, and 60 frames per second it would just be 1 divided by 60. So we take 1 times, or 100 times delta. Now first we have to solve for delta. So if we go 1 divided by 20. So right now, for 20 frames per second, our delta value is 0.05 times 100, because that's a gravity value. So this is going to end up equaling, let's see, times 100, 5. So this is going to be 5. So what that means is when your game is running 20 frames per second, the gravity is now, so if you take gravity multiplied by delta and we're adding that every frame to the velocity, we're going to take 5 and add downwards velocity once every frame 20 times. Now that's important to remember. It's once a frame 20 times a second, because it's frames per second. Now if we do the same thing here, if we do 1 divided by 60, that means 0.016 infinite, so it's 0.666, and this is rounded up. So this is the time between each frame in seconds. So delta is 0.016, and times gravity, which is 100. Oops, I put 10 here. It's 100. So this, 100 times delta, which is 0.016, ends up equaling times 100. That's 1.6 infinite So that means is a downwards velocity of 1.6 is going to be applied 60 times every second because it's running 60 frames. Now, the next thing we have to do, you're probably saying, oh, this value is bigger than this one, so aren't they still inconsistent? Well, the last thing we have to do is take this value, since it's running 20 times a second, you take 5, multiply by 20, which equals 100 in this case, which is our original gravity value. So every second, a value of 100 is going to be applied downwards. Now here, we take 1.6 times 60, because we're running 60 frames. So 1.6 times 60, and that also equals 100. Equals 100. So the gravity value of also 100 is going to be applied downwards every second. So what that means is no matter how many frames we're going, a gravity value of 100 is going to be being applied downwards to our velocity. So let's try that, times delta. Now if we just play this, we're going to see a problem. Is we're going to be flying up because there's not enough gravity now to be pulling us down as fast as we want. And that is because in this case, originally, let's just make it like a new thing, because originally, without delta, when it's just 100, we were just taking a blank default value of 100 and multiplying it by the frames. So in this case, it would be 2000, so it would be doing 2000 velocity down before. But now, since we're taking the value of gravity and multiplying by delta, in this case it's 0.5, it changes it to a really low value. For 20 frames it's 5, for this it's 1.6. So now there's going to be almost no gravity or very little gravity. So that's why when you jump, you're flying really high, because there's almost no gravity there to actually start pulling you down. So normally what you would do to keep consistent gravity when you do start multiplying by delta is, if you were making your game when the physics engine was running 60, you would take your original gravity, which would be 100, and then you want to multiply it by 60. So that would, you'd get 6,000. So that's what we're going to be putting as our new gravity value in Godot. So if we go here, now type 6,000. So now, we're running, let's put 60 frames. So the physics engine's running 60 frames. We run. This is original. This is how it was running originally. It looks fine, you know. It feels exactly how I want it to feel. And if the person with the low-end laptop or whatever comes in, wants to play our game, he's running 20 frames. Now he's having the same exact jump value as the person running 60 or higher, 144, anything. We go there, type 144. Now the dude with the beast gaming laptop or whatever also jumps the same height as the person running 20 or the person running 60, because since we're multiplying by delta, the gravity values are now consistent with the frame rate. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something about delta and what it actually does versus just using it because people tell you to. Because I was doing that for a long time, and until I understood what delta was, I never knew an actual situation whether to use it or not. Have a great day, Godoting it up, and I will see you in my next non-existent video.